Hello everyone, it's Skill here from the Grim Reapers, and today I'll be going through a short hardware review and my initial impressions video for the Pimax Crystal Super VR headset. For the purposes of full disclosure, Pimax sent me the Crystal Super for this review. They didn't ask for any favourable comments, only that I give my fair, honest opinions and feedback. The Crystal Super is my third headset from Pimax. I already have the original Crystal and the Crystal Lite. Both are absolutely fantastic headsets, with the original Crystal currently my favourite headset of all time for PC flight sims. Let's see if the Super can knock it off its perch. Before I go on, I'll show you my system specs, so you can judge the relative performance of the Crystal Super later in the video. I'm running an Intel i9-13900K with 64GB of system RAM and an RTX 4090 GPU. Whilst I go over the review, I'll have some footage playing in the background of one of my first flights using the Pimax Crystal Super. It's a short patrol from Bagram to Kabul in the DCS Apache. I know the footage doesn't do the headset the justice it deserves, but that's one of the limitations of trying to record VR. Any stuttering you see isn't visible to me in the headset, and is just a side effect of the recording. Before I get to the unboxing, let's have a look at some of the specs for the Pimax Crystal Super. I won't read through everything, but I'll post up some images and point out some of the most notable features. You can pause here and have a read for yourself. The version I have has the QLED panels with a display resolution of 3840 by 3840 per eye, glass aspheric lenses which provide a display of 50 ppd, local dimming 2 which has 1000 dimming zones. It has eye tracking and auto IPD adjustment. The headset features inside-out tracking, so no need for base stations, although you will be able to upgrade in the future to a lighthouse faceplate as you can with the original Crystal and the Crystal Lite. Unlike the original Pimax Crystal, the Super is a pure PC VR headset. The Crystal Super comes in the same nice simple black box as the previous Crystal headsets. This was contained in an outer box to protect it during shipping. Let's open it up and have a look. Oh, nice. A wee welcome card from the team at Pimax. There's a replacement facial interface foam. I think this is the thicker foam than the standard pre-installed one, so you can choose which one is better for you. The optional DMAS speakers, the optional comfort strap, then the headset itself. I'll put the headset aside for now and come back and have a look at that later. The controllers, which appear to be the same as the controllers for the original Crystal and the Crystal Lite. Underneath this section of foam packing there is a quick start guide and an after sales guide. A box within a box containing the DisplayPort and USB cable. A power adapter with a selection of plug attachments which you can select depending on your country. A small packet containing a screwdriver and really tiny little screws. These are for attaching the comfort strap. Note, there are no batteries in the box. The Crystal Super does not require any batteries, just a provided power adapter. And last but not least, the headset itself. The first thing I noticed when I picked the headset up out of the box was how light it was. I mean, it feels surprisingly lightweight. It is a smaller form factor than the previous two Crystals and feels really well made. The headset itself feels like it's made of high quality plastics and has a nice satin finish to it. It feels like it's well put together, nothing looks or feels like it's about to fall off or break. The head strap is articulated at the front and has plenty of movement, allowing you to adjust it so that it fits you comfortably. It has the ratchet wheel mechanism at the rear to tighten it, and has the same wide top strap as the Crystal Lite, which is easily adjustable. To the top left of the main unit is the power button and volume controls. And there are some cable management channels built into the head strap. As I said earlier, the Crystal Super is smaller than the other two Crystal headsets, and here you can see it compared to the original Crystal. The Pimax Crystal Super is very easy to connect and set up. Simply install Pimax Play, connect the DisplayPort cable from the headset to your GPU, and the USB cable to a USB 3 or higher port on your PC. No need for a powered hub, as the headset uses its own power supply. Talking of which, connect the power supply and that's it. Launch Pimax Play and adjust your settings as required. The Pimax Play I am currently using for this video is a testing version, so some of the Super's features are not yet available, such as the super high field of view. I'll show some images here of my current settings which I use for flying in DCS. Almost 2 years ago now, I tested the original Crystal and was blown away by the sharpness of the visuals. At that time, I didn't think anyone could beat the image quality of the Crystal with its 35 ppd, or even that they really needed to, well, not for flight sims at least. Here's a reminder of my thoughts at that time. And the only word I can use to describe what I saw when I first put the headset on is wow. I mean seriously, wow. Well, Pimax have done it again. Once I had this Crystal Super all set up, I jumped straight into DCS, leaving the Crystal Super at its native resolution, using the built-in eye tracking, dynamic foveated rendering, quad views, and wow again. These images simply don't do the Crystal Super any justice. But whilst I talk about the visuals, I'll show some through the lens footage. I really tried my best, but I couldn't get rid of all the artifacts you can see, just recording using my mobile phone, but hopefully you can get a bit of an idea of how clear the image is. The image quality and the sharpness in the Super is fantastic. I was absolutely blown away by how clear and sharp the displays are. But it's not just that, the field of view is amazing. As I say, I cannot select the wider field of view yet, but the 127° field of view feels great. I made some measurements using an app I found online to measure both the horizontal and the vertical field of view. And here are my results. On the left are the measurements from the original Crystal, and on the right are my measurements from the Crystal Super, as it comes out of the box using the standard facial interface. Seeing the numbers is one thing, experiencing the larger field of view is something else. It definitely helps with your situational awareness when flying in the sim. Not only is the field of view larger, the lenses Pimax have used mean that the image is super clear and sharp across almost all of that field of view. I only noticed a bit of blurring right near the edges of my vision in both the horizontal and the vertical fields. There was no distortion or warping of the image at all, no God rays, and absolutely no screen door effect. Not only that, but the display is a lot brighter than the original Crystal and the Crystal Light. I mean, I never thought they weren't bright enough to start with, but the Crystal Supers is a lot brighter. All the colours are bright and vibrant, and the local dimming too means that the dark areas can be really dark, and the contrast between light and dark is stunning. Alas, there is always a but, and here it is. Here is where I encountered my biggest issue with the Crystal Super. There is Mura. To me, it looks like someone has applied a very, very subtle film grain effect over the whole display. But only when you're looking at large, brightly lit areas, like a bright menu screen or a bright sky. It is very subtle, but it is noticeable, so I think it's important to tell you about it. It is not noticeable at all in darker areas, such as inside the cockpit, or looking at the ground. I was very concerned that once I had seen it, I would never be able to unsee it. But thankfully, after a very short time, I stopped noticing it, unless I actually tried to look for it. So for me, using this headset is not a deal breaker. Of course, I prefer if it wasn't a thing at all, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a very subtle Miura effect, which is easily forgotten against the backdrop of the outstanding image quality. Another minor issue I noticed was some ghosting effects. These are only really apparent for the first couple of minutes after starting the headset, then they disappear, almost as if the display panels have to warm up. There is also colour fringing around some text, mainly in the game menus. I haven't noticed it being an issue when I'm looking at dials or instruments within the cockpit, or when I'm actually flying, only really in the menus, and in particular, white writing against a green background seems to be the worst. When it comes to the audio, as with all of Pimax headsets I've tried, I would highly recommend using the DMAS speakers. They provide some of the best quality audio of any VR headset out there. The standard SMAS speakers are adequate, but they have the same limitations as any downfire type speaker and don't really hold a candle to the DMAS ones. As I said earlier, the Crystal Super is surprisingly lightweight. I mean, although it's substantially smaller than its Crystal predecessors, it is still not a small headset when compared to some of the other headsets available out there. Because it felt so light when I initially picked it up, I decided to weigh it, and here are the results. As you can see, 870 grams. I found that the headset is very comfortable to wear, even for prolonged flying sessions. The foam facial interface is soft, and the head strap with a wide top strap means that it's easy to find a comfortable position for the headset. Talking of the facial interface, the whole face mask section is held in place magnetically, making it easy to detach and replace if required. So far, I have only been using the Crystal Super in DCS. This sim natively allows the use of quad views, which means that the Super can make the most out of its eye tracking and dynamic foveated rendering, which, in simple terms, means that the image where your eyeballs are looking is rendered at the full native resolution, and the area around the periphery is rendered at a much lower resolution, helping reduce some of the demand on your PC. I left my DCS in-game settings as they were for the original Crystal to see how the performance compared. I was pleasantly surprised. The performance using the Super was still pretty amazing. Despite it being a much higher resolution display, I was still able to maintain 72 FPS in most areas, with the occasional dip. There are numerous options within Pimax Play to help performance, such as reducing the render resolution, smart smoothing, upscaling, the ability to lock half frame rate, etc. So even folk with the not quite god tier systems can tune their performance to their needs. But let's not kid ourselves though, the Pimax Super is a monster of a headset with an unparalleled display, which means that you're going to need a powerful PC to make the most out of it. I almost forgot, the version of the Crystal Super that I am using is the 50 ppd QLED version. At some point in the future, Pimax will be releasing the 57 ppd and the micro OLED versions. However, if you purchase the current headset, you won't have to buy a whole new headset if you decide you want to go for one of the other options down the line. You can simply buy what Pimax is calling the Optical Engine and swap out the existing one in your headset. It's a very straightforward operation. Just press these two tabs and the Optical Engine slides out of the headset. Insert the replacement and you're good to go. And before I get to my conclusion, I'll quickly mention the price, which isn't as straightforward as it sounds. As it stands, you can purchase the headset standalone for an upfront payment of $1,799, or you can join Pimax Play and make an upfront payment followed by a Prime payment, either as a whole single payment or as monthly instalments. This option also gives you the opportunity to try out the headset for 14 days prior to committing to the purchase. I won't go into detail here, but I'll post some images from the Pimax store site to explain better than I can. You can pause on the images to read the details or visit the store site directly. If you are considering a purchase, please feel free to use the affiliated link in the description below. It will get you a very small discount and is a great way to help support the channel. Okay, time for my conclusion. Well, so far I'm utterly blown away with the Pimax Crystal Super. So much so that it has kicked the original Crystal right off the top spot as my favourite headset for flight sims. I know it isn't perfect, and I think it's important to point out the minor issues I had with the Miura and ghosting. But as I said earlier, the Miura is very subtle and quickly and very easy not to notice anymore, and the ghosting seems to disappear after a couple of minutes. Pimax have come on leaps and bounds with their software over the last couple of years, so I'm looking forward to seeing if they can eliminate at least some of the issues with the Super, as well as adding the wider field of view settings as well as other functions. I can't emphasise enough how impressive the image quality is. The wide field of view, the super sharp image across almost all of that display mean that I can basically look over all of the instruments in the cockpit by just moving my eyes instead of having to move my whole head. I know that this is another addition in the ever-growing list of expensive VR headsets, but I think for the amount of headset you're getting, it is very reasonably priced. There are far more expensive headsets out there which, on paper at least, don't have anywhere near as good displays or field of view as the Pimax Crystal Super. I will be back with more Pimax Crystal Super videos once I've had a chance to dial in some settings in both DCS and Microsoft Flight Simulator. Then I'll be able to give you a final verdict. In the meantime, thank you all for taking the time to watch this review, and I'll catch you later.